Hey everybody, Bryce Coon here. It's another edition of Swarm Talk presented here with the Crowded Booth. And hey, spring game's coming up. We got a little bit of a preview what you might be wanting to look for, but realistically, what's going to happen in Thursday's spring game as the Jackets take the field at Bobby Dodd for the first time in front of fans in 2022. This is the Crowded Booth, and this is Swarm Talk.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. Coming on the Crowded Booth with Bryce Coon.
Hey everybody, Bryce Coon here with the Crowded Booth presenting Swarm Talk, our Georgia Tech themed show. If you know me, you know I cover Georgia Tech for 24/7 Sports. I got my good friend Ralph here who was the behind the scenes. Ralph, I think you earned the title as a producer of Swarm Talk. So now we bring you in front of the camera to talk a little bit things about Georgia Tech. Now this is how we're going to do this. Make sure, first off, to subscribe to the channel. Shows presented by Section 103. We love their gear. They've got some good stuff. We're sporting the Braves stuff today because, hey, it's a big, big week for the Atlanta Braves. But let's talk a little bit about this, Ralph. It's the spring game for Georgia Tech. They're going to be playing on a Thursday night, obviously, St. Patrick's Day. First off, Thursday night's kind of weird. But I talked with a student that you and I both know they're going to be there. They're going to enjoy themselves afterwards, the games, after a little St. Patrick's Day going out in Midtown Atlanta. But first off, man, let's talk about this. You don't follow Georgia Tech as closely as I do, but we watched, I remember the North Carolina game together, the back half of that game together.
It was a great game.
It was a great game. You also sat in, obviously, and helped with a lot of the shows we did last fall where you saw kind of me talking about this, so you have some knowledge. This is a team that has a revamped offensive staff, Ralph. Brand new offensive coordinator in Chip Long. The new quarterbacks coach, which I didn't put in there, was Chris Weinke, the former Heisman Trophy winner. Mike Daniels, offensive or the running backs coach. They've overhauled this. Ralph, defense was a big problem, but let's just talk about first off the spring game. Let's lower the expectations of the fan base because you've watched enough football. I have too. You're not going to see everything you want in a spring game. Why do you think that is? And I think the biggest reason is just film and tape. They're not going to show their full hand here on March 17th.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go back a few years when I was in high school and grew up an Auburn fan, and I would go to the Auburn spring game every once in a while just because it was fun, and I enjoyed, it was $5 a ticket and sit wherever you want. You can sit close to the field and see the players play. And it was the year after Auburn made the national championship game, so, it was kind of exciting to see all those guys come back and, be, just kind of enjoy the game. It's more for the guys who are fighting for that second and third team spot, really.
Yeah.
You're not going to – you'll see now if there's an open quarterback competition, which I believe Georgia Tech has one, if I'm correct.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little too.
Probably. If
What'd you
Sims
say?
is back. Sims is back, right?
Yes, Sims is back.
So,
excuse him, Georgia Tech faithful. He's just joining. He's just.
I'm trying my best. I keep up with him on Twitter as much as I can, and I read most of the what you write on it. But it's just kind of hard to keep up with a lot of different other stuff going on.
Oh, you're right.
But,
you're right.
You'll see, Jensen will go out there for a few drives, and he'll play with the first team, and you'll whoever the second string, third team, they'll all file in order, and you'll see a lot of the younger guys, a lot of these guys who are early enrollees who got with the spring practice. They're there, they're working out with the team, they're practicing with the team, and just getting live reps in a game in front of the fans will be, it's good for these guys. It's a good kind of atmosphere bringer to them. That's a weird way to say it. I watched. I know it's a bad thing. Back in Auburn was struggling at this point when Sean White was a freshman, and he was an early enrollee and came to Auburn and played in that spring game. He said it was a huge boost for him to play in front of fans at Jordan-Hare, instead of seeing it as a fan. He got to be on the field and throw the football to his teammates in front of fans. So these younger guys, it's going to feel a little weird to them, but it will help them in the long run.
It'll help in the long run, Ralph. They've obviously been building to this point. Georgia Tech started spring practice kind of earlier than other teams. I think their big rivals, Georgia, started this week, so it changes some things. Ralph, you talked about early enrollees, but also an opportunity for those guys that came through the transfer portal, a former Auburn Tiger and Amari Harvey. There's also Kari G. There's Hassan Hall, the running back out of Louisville. There's a lot of pieces, and I think it allows for these guys to gel. It allows for the roster to come together, like you said. But listen, it's going to be essentially a glorified 7-on-7. That's really kind of what this is. And Georgia Tech, Ralph, already doesn't do like their typical spring game. Like they don't have a game It's more of just like drills and run throughs. Now, listen, for the fans, for the diehard fans, and I get this, you want to see what is this offense going to look like? What is this team going to look like? We've won, 3 games each of the last 3 years. Something's got to give. But you're not going to get your answer on Thursday night of what this team's going to hold. Let's talk quickly about the quarterback position, Ralph, because you mentioned Jeff Sims, and I'm going to kind of give you kind of the how this team rolls with the 3 quarterbacks they have. They've got a returner in Jeff Sims. He's entering his 3rd year. They've got a transfer in Zach Gibson out of Akron, who was a Atlanta area native. He comes, Ralph, to Akron and has a efficient career. He didn't throw a lot of interceptions, threw for good yardage, was just a solid quarterback. They also bring the 3/4-star by many different recruiting networks. Zach Pyron from Alabama, state of Alabama high schooler, he's in there. You watch Jeff Sims. I've watched a lot of them, Ralph. There's a lot of people down in these comments that are going to be very hypercritical of what Sims is. But would you say, just from an outsider's perspective, not a ton of knowledge on where he is right now, I'd say he's got the athleticism. What do you need to see? Like, what do we need to see? Cutting down on mistakes, obviously, a little more zip, maybe some more better comfort in the pocket, I guess, would be one of the big things.
Well, that's not based on him. That's not his problem. He's a fix. That is his offensive line's problem, honestly. I watched Georgia Tech enough this past year with you to tell you that the offensive line was horrid. Mm-hmm. And I know that's going to hurt some Tech fans, but sorry.
They know. They know.
Yeah. So for Jeff Sims to feel comfortable for this upcoming season, I think consistency is one major thing for him. He has one huge game against North Carolina. What happens 2 weeks later just falls apart. It's just that his consistency will be key. I think him getting the starting job this year and having it beginning of the season instead of having to worry about being benched or brought back in,
hurt and being replaced, and not yet.
And then the second thing is, like what you said, the zip and that release is he has a cannon. He can't consistently, he can't really find his receiver ever. Mm-hmm. So I think with the spring game, like I said, it's a glorified 7-on-7, which it is. It's a good thing though, because it's live reps, it's tackling, so Sims can roll out, he can make his throws, but you need to rely on your arm more. You're in a spread offense now. There's no triple option anymore. You got to be able to throw the ball. It's not high school. You can't just roll around and run it in the backfield for 20 seconds and then sling it to your wide receiver who's been running crossing routes with his teammates for 30 minutes. This is college football. Defensive ends are faster. Outside linebackers are quick. Linebackers can cover your speed. This is where we are in football these days. So Jeff Sims, rely on the arm first. Your feet are second.
I like what you said, because that's where a lot of people are kind of frustrated. Listen, he has the wheels. Ralph, remember the 50-yard touchdown run he had against North Carolina to kind of ice the game up at Mercedes-Benz. But you want to see them use their arm. A big part is the weapons offensively they're going to be using. They've got some. We're going to go more in depth because we're going to have this is just kind of a quick preview of the spring game. We're going to talk more afterwards about what we saw, what we kind of felt like, and that'll kind of be more on my end. But you talk about offensive line play, Ralph. They bring in an Alabama transfer in Pierce Quick, and they bring in Paul Tachio, a transfer from Clemson. 2 high-profile guys, Ralph, that it's not that based on their ability they didn't play. It's just they kind of suffered some injuries, and as well as I do, that's 2 recruiting powerhouses. If you get an injury and you maybe lose a couple games, you kind of start to fall on the totem pole. These are 2 big pickups. That offensive line play, Ralph, we talked about the athletes they have. Jahmyr Gibbs no longer there, all these different things. That offensive line has got to be better. And, the biggest thing for me, do you think we can see, Ralph, communication? Is that going to be something we can see better of, and maybe cohesiveness along the offensive line?
And, obviously you have all the spring practice, and that's what you really hope from your offensive line and defensive linemen. In general, is communication up front. Can they read the defense? Can they read the guys in front of them? Can they read the linebackers? Mm-hmm. And can they communicate well? And that's what spring practice is all about. You're not going over defenses for the fall games. You're going over defense in general. If you see a 3-4 front, what are you doing? See a 4-3 front, what do you see? If you see a 3-3 stack, what are you seeing? That's what you're going to see in college football. Now there's different stunts and stuff that you go over there before games, but can your guys communicate if they show a blitz? Can they work together? Can they double team? Can one guy get up to the next guy on a block? It's just simple things that you would think go over practice and these guys should know at the top of their head, but when you move to college level, it's faster. It's more in depth. There's more aggressive players you got to face, and you got to think on your toes. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
it runs off of the center. It always should be. Quarterback makes his calls, center calls out linebackers, and everyone else follows through. It's just how college football is, how football is done. So can your center make the calls? Can he make the right calls for one? If you miss a block and your quarterback is drilled in the backfield, that's not on Jeff Sims. That's on you.
Mm-hmm.
So communication is huge for this game for these guys.
Yeah, just kind of getting some of that stuff out of the way. And obviously the new offensive coordinator in Chip Long, I feel like this was a great hire for Georgia Tech where they weren't going to lure a big name, but you get a guy like Chip Long that had success at Notre Dame. Now, listen, they didn't win the playoff game. They didn't do anything once they got the playoffs, but they got to the playoff. And they were perennially a 10-plus win team. When you bring in a guy that has that pedigree, and you and I have gone back and forth on our normal show about, Ian Book was an elite quarterback, but the guy won, and he was good. Yeah. When you bring in a guy with that track record, that's good. Also, you bring in a guy like Chris Weinke, Ralph, that we knew what he did as a player. That knowledge for Jeff Sims and the whole quarterback room is just that's a big, big piece to have. Let's switch over to defensively here. The defense, Ralph, going back to the North Carolina game that you and I watched, that was kind of the best performance. 10 tackles for loss, if I'm correct, in the first half. They've got to fly around, but you and I know the biggest thing, and this is my key of what I want to see, and you're not going to see a ton of things in the spring game. I want to see, Ralph, communication on the back end from your safeties and your corners and your secondary. And I also want to see just cohesion and playing together and flying around defensively, because when you know what your job is, and you know this is best as I do, when you know what your job is in the football field, you can play 100 times better. When you are unaware of what you were supposed to do and what your role is, and you talked about it offensively for the offensive line, defense is the same thing. You're not going to get a lot of, this guy could be a riser. Those stories are going to come out of this. But in my opinion, what the biggest thing is I need to see is cohesion and playing together on the defensive side of the football, because that was a big, big problem for them last year. I know they got the two guys that are, did well in the pro day, athletic freaks, but this is a team that's got to be better defensively if they want to have success this year. And I think the biggest thing is with a lot of new faces, Travaris Tillman for NFL defensive back, former Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket, the new DB coach. Defensive line, we've talked about some of the transfer outs they've had. Jared Ivey went to Ole Miss. All of these things, you got some new faces. Let's see how they gel. Let's see how they communicate, because production-wise in a spring game doesn't mean a lot. Am I right in saying that?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this defensive back group, and it's a really young group, honestly. And that it goes in good things and bad things, because they're young means more mistakes, but they're young, it means they can develop together for longer and be better in the long run. So 2 years, your defensive back group is all juniors, or they've been playing each other 2 to 3 years now, and then they work well, they understand the defense, they're headhunters at that point. Mm-hmm. That's what Georgia Tech. I feel like Georgia Tech's defense is just soft. I know that's going to hurt some fans, but if you look at the past. I mean, this past year you're getting, sometimes you're getting. What was the last 2 games? You got lost with
Notre Dame and Georgia, 100 to nothing. Yeah,
100 to nothing. You didn't score. I mean, obviously your offense didn't score anything, but you give 100 points in 2 games.
That's personal.
That's not good. Yeah. So go out there and grow a pair, please. I mean, you're taking down the chin in the last 2 games of the season. That's embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
And so go out there, work together, get better. This is we said it again, glorified 7-on-7. Those matter.
Take pride in it.
Coaches watch you out there. They want to see you work your butt off. This is not just for fun. Yeah, the fans will enjoy it, but that comes for before and after the fact. During that game, you're locked in. You're listening to your coaches. You're listening to your teammates. You're listening to your captains. You're flying to the ball, like you said. It's consistency is what this whole team needs. It's that I feel like there's one game that's like the defense is really shown up today, and the offense doesn't, or the offense shows up, the defense is non-existent. And in some games, both never show up. So
yeah,
Georgia Tech to me right now is in a weird state where they just need to just work on consistency. Just mesh well together, because it really hasn't meshed together in the past 2 years. And honestly, and I'm saying that because that's the long I've been following as much as with you, is because I've watched a few games with you and I've kept those on Twitter and all social media. So consistency is one big thing, and this is where you can learn a lot of it in this on the spring game.
Yeah, learning the spring game, having that consistency. And Ralph, as we wrap up, I want to kind of get your thoughts on this. It's a tough schedule this fall, no doubt about it. You have Clemson, Mercedes-Benz on a Monday night to open the season. You take on Western Carolina, but then you welcome Ole Miss. You go to UCF, and then obviously you have Georgia on the road. And then all of that, you're going to play your conference schedule, Ralph, and Jeff Collins has got a tough task in front of him. I was talking about this today. The message that was preached at the beginning of his tenure, in hindsight, it doesn't look good because he was rah, 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 rah. But I think you had to do that in order to get any kind of talent because Georgia Tech has just been irrelevant on a national scale for so long. And like, yeah, I know you beat Dak Prescott and Mississippi State, but it was every so often that you were going to do that. You weren't consistently a contender and consistently in a national type of conversation. So when you look at this, Ralph, and this revamped coaching staff, I think that they've I say this all the time when I'm talking to Georgia Tech fans. I think they finally have a staff they're comfortable with, a staff that's pushing, a staff that's being serious about what they need to do. It's not a lot of rah-rah. I think Jeff Collins gets that. But is the runway long enough for this staff? That's just going to be the big thing. I think the plane's getting ready to take off, but we don't know if the runway's long enough. It'll be interesting to see. Ralph Leary and Bryce Coon, little presentation of Swarm Talk here on the Crowded Booth. Make sure you check out the rest of the channel. We got a lot of content. I know Georgia Tech fans, also probably a lot of you are Braves fans as well. Thanks to the big sponsor, Section 103. Ralph is not the biggest, most educated Georgia Tech fan, but did a great job today, a good job of that. And also, he loves Section 103 gear. And he's also been to a Georgia Tech baseball game. Big thing. Georgia Tech baseball continuing to do what they do. Georgia Tech softball smacked around the Georgia Bulldogs earlier this week. So, Ralph, I appreciate you as always. This has been the Crowded Booth Swarm Talk. We're going to talk once again a little bit after the spring game. What are some takeaways? But once again, as we wrap it up, don't look too much into this. Glorified 7-on-7, but Ralph hit the nail on the head. What is the communication, cohesion like on both the offensive and defensive fronts, and just all together? What is the vibe of this team? That's something I think you can take away. Not necessarily, oh, Jeff Sims threw for 127 yards. The stats really don't matter. But what type of throws did he attempt? How comfortable did he look in the pocket? It's going to be a big thing for us going forward. This has been Swarm Talk by the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Coon.